The phone rings on draft day. You're a fifth-round pick, the kind of player who's supposed to be grateful just to get a shot in the NFL. On the other end of the line is the Baltimore Ravens, one of the league's most respected franchises, offering you a chance to learn behind Lamar Jackson. Every prospect in your shoes would jump at the opportunity. But you don't. You say no. Minutes later, 2 more calls come in. First from the Philadelphia Eagles, fresh off a Super Bowl appearance with Jalen Hurts at the helm, and then from the Cleveland Browns, a team desperate for quarterback depth. And once again, you refuse. That's exactly what Shadur Sanders did on April 26, 2025. A projected top 10 pick who slid all the way to the 5th round, Sanders made the boldest, most audacious power move in draft history. For months. The story was simple, or so we thought. ESPN painted him as arrogant, too proud to sit behind Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. The talking heads called it delusional. Here was a player whose stock had plummeted, who should have been thankful for any chance to prove himself, turning down one of the most stable organizations in football. But then Cam Newton changed everything. On his podcast, Newton revealed that Sanders hadn't just turned down the Ravens. He had turned down 3 teams in the span of a single draft window: the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Browns. What looked like arrogance suddenly became strategy. What looked like entitlement started to resemble calculation. Newton's bombshell reframed the entire saga. He wasn't speculating. He cited direct sources inside Sanders' camp, including agent David Mulugeta, who reportedly fielded those calls in a frenzied 20 to 30-minute stretch of the 5th round. While ESPN had the football world convinced this was one kid snubbing one team, Newton revealed a systematic rejection of multiple franchises, and that changed the conversation from entitled bust to 5th rounder with superstar leverage. The fact that Sanders was even willing to play hardball at this stage was historic. No late-round pick had ever dared to dictate terms like this. To understand why, you have to rewind. Sanders entered the 2025 draft as college football royalty. A prodigy who threw for over 10,000 yards and nearly 100 touchdowns, he'd been projected in countless mock drafts as a top 10 pick. But as the draft approached, whispers began to circulate. NFL executives complained about his interviews, about Deion Sanders' public comments that alienated certain organizations, about a camp making demands that rubbed teams the wrong way. Whatever the truth, Sanders slipped. The 1st round came and went. The 2nd. The 3rd? By the time the 5th round began, what was once unthinkable had become humiliating. Cameras lingered on him at his draft party as lesser-known names were called before his. Most players in that position would have taken the first lifeline tossed their way. Sanders didn't. When Baltimore called at pick 141, his camp thanked them and declined. According to Newton, the reasoning was respect. Sanders didn't want to build his career on the misfortune of others, and with Lamar Jackson in his prime and locked in for years, the only way to see the field would be through Jackson's injury or collapse. Sanders had too much respect for that to sit around and wait. He wanted to compete. He wanted opportunity. He wanted a real shot. The same logic applied to Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, still young and under contract through 2028, wasn't going anywhere. To accept that job would have meant 4 or 5 years of irrelevance. His career stalled before it ever started. And so Sanders said no again, this time to one of the NFL's most exciting rosters. To outsiders, it looked insane. To Sanders, it was clarity. And then came Cleveland. The Browns weren't offering stability. They weren't offering prestige. What they offered was chaos. An aging Joe Flacco, a carousel of failed prospects, a front office scrambling for answers. To most players, it looked like a graveyard. To Sanders, it looked like a door. Unlike Baltimore and Philadelphia, Cleveland didn't have an immovable superstar blocking his path. It was messy, volatile, and unpredictable, but it was a place he could carve out his own role. What Newton emphasized in his podcast was the deeper philosophy behind Sanders' choice. It wasn't arrogance. It was respect for Lamar Jackson, for Jalen Hurts, and for the game itself. Sanders refused to spend the early years of his career quietly waiting for disaster. He didn't want to be the guy holding a clipboard, hoping a teammate failed so he could step in. That mindset, Newton argued, poisons young quarterbacks. It breeds bitterness. It stalls growth. Sanders chose instead to risk it all for the chance to write his own story, and here's where the media comes in. ESPN's version painted Sanders as an entitled diva. Newton accused them of journalistic malpractice, arguing that leaving out 2/3 of the truth was as bad as lying outright. By focusing only on the Ravens' rejection, they'd created a narrative that was technically true but fundamentally misleading. The full story was far more nuanced, and once Newton dropped it, the debate exploded across social media. Was Sanders a visionary who knew his worth, or a reckless kid who just set fire to his career? The numbers tell the tale. Newton's episode hit 1.2 million views in 72 hours. Sentiment tracking revealed a nation split. 55% supporting Sanders' boldness, 35% condemning him as arrogant, and 10% unsure. For every critic who called him delusional, there was another voice framing him as a trailblazer. And the irony? Sanders' preseason performance with Cleveland started to validate his gamble. Completing 26 of 35 passes for 267 yards and 2 touchdowns, he showed poise, accuracy, and the kind of presence that had once made him a first-round lock. Suddenly, his refusal to sit in Baltimore or Philadelphia didn't look like arrogance. It looked like foresight. The long-term impact of this move might reshape the NFL draft forever. Teams have always held the power. Prospects, especially late-rounders, were expected to take whatever was offered. Sanders flipped that dynamic on its head. He treated himself like a free agent, weighing situations and rejecting those that didn't align with his vision. His willingness to go undrafted rather than compromise shocked executives but inspired future draft classes. Agents are already whispering that the Sanders blueprint could become a strategy for other players who slide lower than expected, and maybe that's the real story here. It's not just about Sanders. It's about the shifting balance of power between players and teams. It's about a new generation of athletes refusing to play by old rules. Whether you think Shadur Sanders is a genius or a fool, one thing is undeniable. He's rewriting the script for what it means to be a rookie in the NFL. Now the question is yours. Was Sanders' decision the ultimate act of self-respect or the riskiest miscalculation of his career? Did he show a new path for young athletes to follow, or did he simply gamble away the one thing every prospect dreams of? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on every twist in this unprecedented saga, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss what happens next.